Okay, welcome to High Cheese with Darren Maloney. Today is Monday, March 21st, 2022. Okay, let's go right to Ukraine. I just want to give you an update on where we are. Right now, we've got Zelensky continuing to ask for a no-fly zone, continuing to ask for some type of additional support from the West. And he came out and he said that if negotiations fail with him and Russia over some kind of settlement, World War III will result. And look, is he going over the top at this point right now? I think Ukraine is at a point where somebody has to reach out for Zelensky, put his arm around him, said, listen, this is something you're not going to win. The best you're going to get is no NATO. You get to keep your power. Ukraine gets to keep its borders without Crimea, without the Russian-speaking areas of eastern Ukraine, and without Mariupol. I think that's the best he can do right now. The other alternative is just oblivion. I mean, he's fooling himself at this point if he thinks that he can beat Russia in a battle of attrition. It's just not going to happen. And he's not helping the Ukraine people. And somebody has to take a rational look at this. Right now, all we hear is the emotion. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing that the Russians are bombing civilians. It's a terrible thing of what's happening. But for Zelensky to continue this, and again, I blame the West also. I blame the globalists for stringing Zelensky along over this past year, implying, oh, you'll get into NATO. You'll get into the EU. We'll help you out. We'll get involved if Russia attacks. Well, Zelensky misread everything. He misread the West, and he misread Russia. So he's got to make the best of a bad situation and take a hard look at settling. Now, Russia came out and they gave Mariupol, which is the bridge city in eastern Ukraine. Now, essentially, Russia holds Crimea, and they hold the eastern sections of Ukraine that are Russian-speaking that had declared their independence. And Mariupol is a bridge city that connects those two areas. So right now, Mariupol is getting pounded to oblivion by Russia, and it's not good. They had a 5 o'clock deadline, 5 a.m. deadline to surrender, and they didn't do it. So something's got to give. I mean, is Zelensky waiting for Russia to actually enter Kiev in order for a settlement? People have to know what Zelensky's endgame is. The United States just gave him a ton of money, and there's got to be some resolution to this. And the thing I don't like is I see that the U.S. press is getting to these crazy stories, and it's a psyop at this point. I mean, here's one story here. It says here, Russian elites are planning to overthrow Putin. Ukrainian intelligence, and this is from the New York Post. It says here, a group of Russian elites are allegedly conspiring to overthrow Russian President Putin and restore economic ties in the West, according to Ukrainian intelligence. Now, how the hell is that going to happen? Do you think these oligarchs have military behind them? Now, it says, are they going to poison him? Say poison, sudden illness, accident? Russia at least is considering moving Putin? I'm not convinced that the oligarchs in Russia are against Putin. And they may have been sanctioned, but I'm sure they have a ton of money left. And you have to understand, a lot of these oligarchs are like Putin in the sense they came from nothing. Putin came from nothing. A lot of these oligarchs came from nothing. And they're very comfortable going back to nothing. And I don't think the West realizes that. Now, I think Putin is quite comfortable with struggling. And I think a lot of these oligarchs also. Would they miss their yacht? Sure. But deep down, these are hard-scrabble guys, most of them. They made their billions, but you think about it. If these oligarchs want to go against Russia, or they want to go against Putin, they're essentially people without a country at that point. And now they really have nothing. And I just don't believe these stories anyway. Then there's another story that ties into this assassination of Putin. It says, ruthless ex-KGB spy tipped by spooks to take over if Putin is toppled by Kremlin. It says here, and this is from the Mirror, says an ex-KGB agent accused of having a hand in the death of a spy on British soil has been tipped to succeed Vladimir Putin if he is toppled. As the Russian invasion nears the 1-month mark, the Ukrainian intelligence service claims to have unearthed a plot devised in the upper reaches of Russian society to dethrone the president. Among the planned conspiracies against Putin are poisoning, heard that one, or an accident, according to Kiev sources who claim the cell wants to be rid of the Russian leader as soon as possible. Now, to me, I just think this is all fake. And the other question, I think it was Tucker Carlson asked this question a week or two ago. Well, what happens if Putin is replaced? And the guy that replaces Putin is worse than Putin. So the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Putin doesn't care. He would know about this long before the CIA would. So this is just targeted to us in the West. They want to keep this going. Yeah, we got a chance. Yeah, Ukraine has a chance. And I don't think that's the moral thing to do at this point. Ukraine is overwhelmed. Ukrainians are getting killed. And we're just giving them just enough to keep this slaughter going. Just enough so Ukraine can continue defending themselves while they are slowly being ground down. Maybe if he can't get what he wants, he will create a World War III. Does that mean shooting a missile into Belarus, which apparently happened? Or does that include secretly shooting a missile into Poland or one of the NATO countries and saying it was Russia? Now, I'm sure they could figure that out, but could there be something a little more sophisticated to draw NATO into this? Who knows? Now, we do know that there are World War III sympathizers in the West, and they're capable of anything. And most of that is the spy in the spy industry. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a clip, and this is Leon Panetta. Now, you remember Leon Panetta? He was one of our former CIA directors that signed the Hunter Biden letter. Remember him? Remember he signed the Hunter Biden letter saying, oh, no, this is Russian disinformation. And he was wrong. So I'm going to play a clip, and this is the result of Russia using a hypersonic missile in the war right now. So let me play this clip, and then we'll get back and discuss.
By using hypersonic missiles like this, he is escalating the war in Ukraine and using the kind of missiles that not only travel at supersonic speeds, but can avoid detection on the ground. This is a weapon that can really ultimately escalate this battle because we can't allow those kinds of hypersonic missiles to be able to now target areas wherever they want and not have the ability to bring them down. I think this is a dangerous escalation in the war.
Well, thank you for that wonderful observation, Leon Panetta. We know what you're trying to do, and why should we believe you? Now, we know that you're trying to escalate this war. You've constantly said it, escalate, escalate, escalate. And we know what you want. You want a no-fly zone. You want more interaction, more conflict between the United States and Russia. We know this is what you want. And this whole thing about escalation, why should we believe you? You said that the Hunter Biden laptop was likely Russian disinformation. You were the head of the CIA and you got it wrong. And you got it wrong for a reason. Because politically, you were influenced. And look at here. Secretary of Defense Austin downplays Russia's use of hypersonic missiles. It's not a game changer. Austin says Putin resorting to using these types of weapons because he's trying to reestablish momentum. It says here, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Sunday downplayed Russia's claim that it used nuclear-capable hypersonic missiles on Ukrainian targets, saying it is not a game changer in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Well, that's the exact opposite of Leon Panetta. Panetta's trying to gin us up. He's trying to get us emotional over this thing so we make the wrong decision. Now, it may be the right decision for them and a few select people in the West, but for us, it's not. So just remember this next time you see the likes of Panetta, Brennan, Clapper, anyone else that is affiliated with the CIA that's speaking in public. Don't believe anything because they're getting paid for their content. They shouldn't be talking anyway. I don't understand what world do we accept spies talking publicly about current affairs. Now, and a side note here is that I think a big blunder was Biden calling Putin a war criminal. Now, if you're the leader of a country, you never say anything like that unless you can back it up because you look weak. So you call Putin a war criminal. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. So all you do is gin up Putin over this, and you're showing your own weakness. Because if you're willing to call Putin a war criminal, you should be willing to go to battle. You're not going to go to battle. We're not going to go to battle. So you make yourself look weak by saying this. You look petty. There's an article here. It says Russian Biden war criminal claim has put relations on the verge of rupture. It says the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it summoned U.S. Ambassador John Sullivan on Monday in Moscow to formally protest President Joe Biden's decision last week to label Russian President Vladimir Putin a war criminal. Now here, and this is the interesting thing, you've got a small, vocal, select people in this country, including the Democratic Party and the media, that has absolutely no concept about how people work. They're able to read a spreadsheet, but they don't understand people. And this is the equivalent of, on a lesser standard, Biden calling Fox reporter Ducey some derogatory statement on Ducey's way out. Yeah, it's just a cowardly thing. These are just words. And unless you can back them up, there's no reason for you to call Putin a war criminal. Because it does make you look weak because you can't back it up. If you were ready to go to war with him, that's a different story. But it's just words. These are just words by you. And let's talk about Hunter. Now, I've got a report here. Hunter Biden's former investment firm, Rosemont Seneca. I mean, this guy's got his fingerprints on everything, either in Ukraine or in China. And we have to have investigations on this. I know that there was an investigation early on. It says the Senate Committee, and I'm reading it right now, it says the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and the Senate Committee on Finance undertook this investigation into potential conflicts of interest and the involvement of the Biden family in foreign business ventures while Joe Biden was vice president, following allegations that the Obama administration's Ukraine policy could have been affected by Hunter Biden's position on the board of Burisma, and that family members may have improperly sought to benefit from their relationship with the president. And again, they concluded that, look, there's a problem with Biden being in Ukraine, being in Burisma, because it could create a conflict of interest, or worse, for Joe Biden. And now I'm getting reports that oligarchs affiliated with Hunter are not getting sanctioned. And this is from Yahoo News. It says this Yelena Baturina, and she wired Hunter $3.5 million. Well, she has not been sanctioned by the U.S. government. So how is President Biden navigating conflicts of interest when it comes to sanctioning people who have done business with this family? And can you explain to us what this $3.5 million was for? This is absolutely terrible. This is grounds for impeachment, among many other things that Biden has done to wreck this country. It's not undoable, but he's wrecked this country. Okay, it says here that a company that Rosemont Seneca, remember, Rosemont Seneca is or was an investment firm that was owned by Hunter Biden. And they had invested in this company called Metabiota, and they partnered with a company called Black & Veatch on the Defense Threat Reduction Agency's Cooperative Biological Engagement Program with a contract not to exceed $970 million. Now, this was the Defense Department program that was involved with the Ukrainian biolabs. From what we know, or what we've been told, is Biden has no more involvement in Ukraine. We don't know. But we do know is that he likely still has business involvement with China. So that doesn't put Joe Biden in a bind in this whole thing. There's got to be investigations. There's got to be further investigations. I know that Hunter Biden is being investigated by the IRS, but that may not be enough, because I want to know how much Joe Biden was involved with this. And I want to know how much Joe Biden has been influenced in today's conflict by his son Hunter Biden's involvement in Ukraine and in China. And God forbid if Joe Biden himself had benefited from this. Okay, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. Okay, welcome back. Just on a related topic, the European Union is meeting to discuss banning Russian oil and Russian natural gas. The European Union imports 49%, around 49% of its natural gas from Russia, and 30% of its oil from Russia. And at the same time, the export of oil to the European Union comprises 40% of the Russian economy. So there's a lot going on here. So what would happen? One is, on the short term, the oil and natural gas price would just spike. You know, we haven't hit $200. People were talking about $200 before. We'll hit $200 a barrel if this happens. Europe would go into a recession, if it's not already in a recession. And the regular people would be paying the price with an exorbitant amount of high prices for gas, oil. There would be a huge impact on Europe if they did this. And there would be an impact on Russia. But I think Russia would have an easier time getting out of this, because they can always turn to China, India, some other places to sell their oil to. Now, the question is, where is the European Union going to go for their oil? Well, they could go to Iran, maybe Venezuela. So now we have our other enemies getting richer over this. And it just as a sidebar, it takes time, particularly with liquid natural gas. You have to set up an infrastructure. Like in Germany, I think Germany just said they were going to work with Saudi Arabia to get some liquid natural gas from them. But you need to build an infrastructure. And that infrastructure hasn't been built yet. And that takes time. So what is Germany going to do until that happens? How are they going to get natural gas? So what could be a disaster for the Biden administration is that Europe is going to turn to the United States and say, we need your oil. You need to pump more. Now, aren't the climate change people going to be real happy with Biden if he decides to pump more oil here? So he opens up the spigots for Europe? He won't open up the spigots for us, but he'll open it up for Europe. And that's a real option. So if the EU does ban oil from Russia, they may come to the United States and look for us. Let's see what Biden does with that. Now you got a real problem. If Europe can't get any oil, easy, you could put those countries in a depression. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Now, in a related topic, you've got, Iran and the U.S.-Iran nuclear deal is still up in the air, and it's just, it's just a mess. You've got amateurs running the show in the United States, and from what I hear, is they're just going to give away the farm again. And the problem is that if we do, and Israel isn't happy with it. Now, Israel has already said in the past that they will not tolerate a nuclear Iran. So now are we going to have to worry about Israel and Iran in a war? Again, it matters who is in charge. It matters who is negotiating your contracts and your treaties. We just have incompetent people. They have not gotten anything right. We got a war in Russia. We got spiking oil prices here. We've got a lousy Iran deal being created. It's just an absolute mess. And there's no one else to blame but Biden on this. So speaking of the global warming people, this came out a couple days ago. And it says here, and this is from CNBC, it says here the SEC wants to know a lot more about what companies are doing about climate change. And it says the Securities and Exchange Commission wants to know a lot more about what companies are doing about climate change. SEC commissioners will be meeting Monday to propose rules to enhance disclosure regarding climate change risks. It's part of an ambitious regulatory agenda set out by the SEC Chair Gary Gensler. More than 50 proposed rules are under consideration. Some of the things that they want mandatory disclosures. This disclosure to be filled out in every company's annual report. They want both qualitative and quantitative disclosures. Let me just read this. Gensler previously said that quantitative disclosures might include information related to greenhouse gas emissions, financial impacts of climate change, and progress toward climate-related goals. The SEC will also likely seek disclosure of climate risks that are material to investors, like risks posed by hurricanes, floods, and droughts. Qualitative disclosures might include how the company's leadership manages climate-related risks and opportunities and how these factors feed into the company's strategy. And it says require companies to back up their claims. So they have to substantiate their claims. And here's the problem. This is why government always grows. Why is the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commissions, is involved with this? Now, the SEC is supposed to protect investors, maintain fair, orderly, and efficient markets, and facilitate capital formation. Where does it say you have to get into greenhouse effects and climate change? And again, this is why government always grows. Now, how is the SEC going to figure out what these disclosures are? They're going to have to hire scientists. They're going to have to figure out what these disclosures mean, when a company files this, what it means. So they hire a ton of scientists. And that's how government grows. Because all of these large federal agencies, all of them, if they all want to get into climate change, this is what they'll do. They'll all have their Department of Climate Change. And it just grows and grows and grows. And this is absolutely absurd. The SEC is involved with climate change. You know what they should be involved with? What they're paying their lowest paid employee. And the spread between CEOs and the average pay of their workers. I think the spread is the largest ever. Why don't they get into that? If they really care about people, they really care about this country and this world, let's elevate their quality of living by paying all employees a fair price and shrink the gap between what CEOs get paid and what the lowest paid employee gets or the average employee gets. That's where you want to make a dent. We don't need scientists in the SEC. Ay. All right, while I'm at it, I got to talk about Francis Collins. My wife was just playing this clip from Apparently, Francis Collins, he's the head of the NIH, and he's actually Anthony Fauci's boss. He just recently retired, and I think it had to do with this email that came out about him and Fauci. And I'll get into it in a minute. So, Francis Collins is the head of the NIH, and apparently he is this big-time Christian scientist that, not Christian scientist, but a scientist who is a Christian. Apparently, talks to these different organizations. He wrote a book on how, he come to terms with science and Christianity. And so he was talking to some organization. I just found it odd. And this is why I'm talking about this. I found it odd. He talked for about an hour and a half, took questions, and not one time did he quote the Bible. It was all about his, I had to come to terms. I was an atheist. He was an atheist. And apparently he was a self-described nasty atheist. So I don't want to get too much, more into him, but, he's a guy that apparently, in my opinion, is following some watered-down version of Christianity that's compatible with science. Because here's the interesting thing. He professes to be a Christian and a scientist, but he's all for Roe v. Wade and late-term abortions. So I don't know how you square that up. And then here's what really got me. Now, this whole thing with this takedown of the Great Barrington Declaration is not very Christian. And let me just explain. Early on, the NIH, Fauci pushed it, were these blanket lockdowns. They locked down the country. And we all know what that is. And a bunch of scientists and doctors got together and they signed the Great Barrington Declaration sometime around September 2020, maybe a little sooner. But a bunch of scientists and doctors got together in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and signed a declaration and said, look, these blanket lockdowns are not good. And they recommended, we know enough about the virus that younger people get it at a significantly lower rate. If they do get it, they don't die. And I'm simplifying things. And we know who needs to be protected. So let's lock down the people that need to be protected. Maybe the elderly, the people with diabetes or cancer, obese. Let's protect them. Let's lock them down. But for some reason, Collins and Fauci didn't want that. And so you know what they did? They undermined the Great Barrington Declaration. And it was not very Christian, Francis Collins, the way that you did this. So let me read an email from Francis Collins to Anthony Fauci and a couple of other scientists. And it says, hi, Tony and Cliff. See the Great Barrington Declaration. This proposal from 3 fringe epidemiologists who met with the secretary seems to be getting a lot of attention. And even a co-signer from Nobel Prize winner Mike Levitt at Stanford. There needs to be a quick and devastating published takedown of this premise. I don't see anything like that online yet. Is it underway? Francis, this is how a thug works. This is how a politician works against their opponent. So what Fauci did is he said, oh, yeah, I'm working on it. He came back a couple of emails later and said, yeah, we're working on it. What he did is he got a bunch of scientists to write op-eds in various newspapers, magazines, websites to attack those that signed the Great Barrington Declaration and to attack the Great Barrington Declaration itself. Again, Francis, that's not very Christian. You were manipulating the public here. And if you were a true Christian, basis of Christianity is free will. And that's the wonderful thing that God gave us. But you didn't seem that you wanted to give the American people their free will to decide. Were lockdowns the best way to do this? Or was the Great Barrington Declaration the better way? And we find that science tells us that your way failed. Remember the Johns Hopkins study that came out? Said these lockdowns had no effect, no statistical effect. But what did they cause? a lot of economic damage, a lot of mental damage that doesn't show up on statistics. So again, it's not very Christian. So maybe next time you want to talk to some of these organizations, why don't you ask for their forgiveness that you made a mistake? Because a Christian will address his mistakes. And this was a mistake. It was a mistake that you tried to undermine your opponents. And this is what I mean. These are all political scientists today. It has nothing to do with the truth. It has nothing to do with science. It's all about undermining your opponent, attacking your opponent. And you were number one on the list, you and Fauci, because you push these programs. Okay, before we go to business and finance, Ketanji Brown Jackson hearing started today, and there were no fireworks. It was just opening statements by all of the senators that are on the committee, as well as Jackson herself. And the questioning should start tomorrow, and that's when things could get dicey. So let's switch to business. The Dow was down today, and most of it had to do with Federal Chairman Jerome Powell vowed to be tough on inflation, which he said jeopardized an otherwise strong economic recovery. He says the labor market is very strong and inflation is much too high, he said at the National Association for Business Economics. The question is that I think most people will tell you that we're expecting 6 additional rate hikes this year. And I think the question is they're trying to read Powell on whether there will be any 50 basis point increase. My own opinion is that there'll be several 50 basis point increases. Some are already debating whether there will be a 50 basis point increase in May at the next meeting. So we shall see. And that's essentially what drove markets today. But to me, it's a little too late by the Fed to handle this. We've already got inflation. I see no end in sight right now. I see possibly a plateau coming, but it will still be high. And I think the Fed is still targeting like a 2.3 or 2.5% inflation rate. And they're just out of line on that. I don't know when we're going to see that. We'll be lucky if we land at 4% in a year or two. That's not good. So anyway, that's where we are with that. And let me just go over the market today. And the Dow finished down 0.58% to 34,552.99. Year to date, the Dow is down 4.91%. The S&P was down 0.04% to 4461.18 for the year. At the S&P is down 6.4%. NASDAQ was down 0.4% to 13,838.46. Year to date, the Dow is down 11.55%. Oil was up 7.09% to $112.12 per barrel. And they're reacting to what I was talking about before with the EU contemplating not purchasing Russian oil. And between you and me, that will go up higher. Oil will go up much higher if they agree not to buy oil from Russia. Gold was up 0.5% to $1,931.16 per ounce. Silver was up 0.8% to $25.15 per ounce. And Bitcoin is at $41,091. Ethereum is at $2,893.67. And XRP is at 84 cents. And right now it is March 21st in the evening of 2022. Interesting thing happened today is, and this is good for crypto, and it says here that Goldman Sachs announces a milestone over-the-counter crypto trade. Let me just read a little bit from CNBC. It says Goldman Sachs is pushing further into the nascent market for derivatives tied to digital assets. The firm is the first major U.S. bank to trade crypto over the counter, CNBC was first to report. Goldman traded a Bitcoin-linked instrument called non-deliverable options with crypto merchant bank Galaxy Digital, the two firms said Monday. The move is seen as a notable step in the development of crypto markets for institutional investors, in part because of the nature of OTC trades. Now, over the counter trades are trades that do not involve an exchange and allows dealers and banks to trade between themselves for certain types of assets. So this is the first time that anyone has ever done this in the crypto market. So it's a good sign for crypto, and I'm happy about that. Again, I do own crypto, although it's getting beat up across the board right now. I do think in the long term, it'll turn out to be a good investment. But just clearly want to state it is a highly speculative instrument, and it is not a hedge on inflation like gold and silver are. And I think the past few months have taught us that. So, crypto still is filling its oats. At some point, there'll be a nice position for crypto as part of everybody's asset allocation. But right now, it's getting beat up. And don't fret. And again, I am not an advisor, and I am not giving anybody advice here. I'm just telling you where I stand on things. Okay, let's talk about the earnings reports. And tomorrow on March 22nd, we've got, well, it's a light week. It's a light week on earnings. So nevertheless, we've got Adobe reporting on Tuesday, March 22nd. We've got Carnival Group, Gold Mining Inc., and Health Equity. On Wednesday, the 23rd, we've got Cintas Corp., we've got General Mills, KB Homes, Winnebago Industry, and Rubicon. Then on Thursday, the 24th, we have Darden Restaurants, Neogen Corp., Altus Power, Daimler Trucks, and First Mining. And then Friday, we wrap up with China Life Insurance, Cresco Labs, and Processa Pharmaceuticals. Let's take a quick look at the economic calendar for the week. Tuesday, March 22nd, we've got three of the Fed presidents are speaking: the New York president, the San Francisco president, and the Cleveland Fed president are all speaking on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we've got, again, Jerome Powell will speak on digital challenges. We have new home sales coming in at 10 o'clock. Then the Cleveland and the San Francisco Fed presidents will be speaking later on in the morning. On Thursday, we'll have initial jobless claims, continuing jobless claims, durable good orders, core capital good orders, the current account deficit. The Minneapolis Fed president will speak. Fed Governor Waller will speak on housing, market manufacturing PMI number, market services PMI number, and then later on that afternoon, the Atlanta Fed president will speak. On Friday, we've got the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, 5-year inflation expectation, pending home sales. And then we've got the New York, San Francisco, Richmond, and the Fed Governor Chris Waller speaking later on that afternoon. So that's it for this week, and you have a good week, and I will talk to you on Saturday.